his initial appearance.
Whitney Wild, thank you so much for that report. We're joined live now by Oren Siegel. He's the Senior Vice President of Counter-Extremism and Intelligence at the Anti-Defamation League. Oren, thank you so much for being with us. I think what frightens people the most, obviously this is a heinous, a horrific crime against the Jewish community in Boulder, Colorado. But then it was only 6 weeks ago that we saw the arson attack against Governor Shapiro. And then just 2 weeks ago, we had this young, beautiful couple murdered outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. And now this. Just give us your reaction to what we saw on Sunday here.
Yeah, this incident in Boulder comes on the heels of multiple different plots and attacks just in the last 12 months in this country against the Jewish community. We have documented at least 9 such attacks and plots, including those that you mentioned. And by comparison, in the previous 54 months, there were only about 7. And so there's clearly a rise, not just in violent attacks against the Jewish community, but frankly, in the language and narratives that we think are normalizing this. For 600 plus days in this country and really around the globe, we have witnessed people tearing down posters of hostages, right? A denial of Israeli and Jewish suffering. And yesterday, an individual actually set them on fire, right? And this includes apparently a Holocaust survivor. Dehumanizing people has horrible consequences, and we are starting to see this play out over and over.
So in this kind of environment, I mean, obviously it's easy to talk about just sort of increasing, visible police presence outside of synagogues and obvious sort of Jewish community buildings. But just in terms of people really sort of maintaining that sense of safety in this kind of environment, that is really difficult to do. How is that accomplished?
It is difficult, right? Because what happens in DC or in Boulder or at a governor's house or, in Jacksonville at an AIPAC chapter has an impact on the Jewish community throughout the country and frankly around the globe. And so, yes, we want law enforcement to be able to have the resources they need to protect Jewish institutions. It also means that the Jewish community itself has to, have their head on a swivel, be much more alert about what is happening, check and double check their security protocols. And frankly, this is not new for the Jewish community. Bulletproof glass and, metal detectors are the norm in most institutions in this country and around the world. But clearly we need to have more vigilance, and we need allyship from others who are willing to call out the type of rhetoric that I think creates an atmosphere that leads to these types of attacks.
That's an interesting point. Just in terms of allyship from others, I mean, what can people who are not Jewish do to really sort of show support for our Jewish brothers and sisters at this time?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when people are set on fire in your city because they are expressing their support for hostages around the world, I mean, it's not, doesn't take much to, pick up the phone and give them a call, show up in solidarity. We have seen examples of other communities show up, during religious holidays like we are in one right now, to make sure that they are not feeling alone. I mean, I think that does go a long way. It's also the recognition that people throughout the year have to speak out against those who are dehumanizing the Jewish people and sometimes conflating the policies of a state of Israel with all Jews. I mean, that requires sort of an understanding and education and speaking out consistently, not just after something happens.
We know that the Run for Their Lives, events in Colorado have been sort of called off temporarily. But are you concerned that fewer people are going to be willing to show up for these kinds of gatherings? I mean, as you point out, the people who had been gathering on Sunday were just simply calling for the release of hostages. Are you concerned that perhaps because of the environment we're in right now, because of what's happened not just on Sunday, but 2 weeks ago and then six weeks ago with Governor Shapiro's mansion, are you concerned that few people are going to be willing to attend these kinds of protests?
In 2024 at ADL, we documented over 1,700 anti-Semitic incidents at Jewish institutions around the country. That was part of over 9,000 incidents of harassment, vandalism, and assault nationwide. And so the community is certainly aware that they are a target. But, we can't allow these incidents to prevent Jews from feeling like they can go out and be in public spaces. Like, that is not going to be the solution. Now, we are hearing from a lot of folks in the Jewish community who are feeling that, who are wondering whether it is safe to be Jewish in a public space. And the answer is we need not only the Jewish community to double down on their security, law enforcement to help out, but for people to literally start calming down the type of rhetoric that leads to this. I think that will help the community feel safer about their decisions to be public.
I mean, it's not just about sort of large public gatherings. I mean, I have friends who have talked about removing the mezuzahs from their door for the same reason, which I'm sure would make you very sad.
Yeah, I mean, we hear this ourselves as well. And, again, the Jewish community for, millennia has been dealing with this. And I do not see the Jewish community in this country retreating, into their homes and not going out. That is not an option, and that is not going to happen. But what we need to do is assess our security and adapt from there. Make sure that we are reaching out to law enforcement about the security of the community, and really open our arms to those who want to stand with us. Because I'm telling you now, the Jewish community feels vulnerable, and any type of outreach from others will be very meaningful.
I think also another concern, and I touched on this in the beginning, is just the pace of these sorts of attacks are scary. I mean, obviously, I've mentioned sort of 3 really visible ones that have been in the news and that people have been talking about prominently, but you said that you've documented many, many others since October 7th, 2023. So just this idea that one attack possibly inspires another attack and you lead to this sort of copycats, I mean, that must be a major concern for you.
Yeah, it's not only the copycat, but it's, after an incident like we saw in DC, for example, occurs, there is a chorus of individuals and groups online, but also on the ground, who justify and legitimize it. Right before the blood even dries, there are people who are saying they deserved it, right? Because they are Jewish, because they're perceived to be supporting the policies of the state of Israel, because Jews seem to be a legitimate target. And I have to say that those narratives that glorify terrorism, that undermine the fact that there's Jewish suffering that is occurring, that essentially any attack against the Jewish community is acceptable, like, that is actually much more common than people would think, both online and from some of the groups that have normalized it. That has to stop, because when that stops, I'm thinking the atmosphere that makes these attacks more likely will hopefully subside as well.
Oren Segal, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. We appreciate it.